Hello, and welcome to Warhammer 40k's Grim History from the Beyond. I'm Zeckthar,
And I'm Yuksen.
and we are the chroniclers of all that was, and all that will be in the 41st millennium. We've seen the rise and fall of many empires, and for the next couple of months, we'll be discussing the tumultuous history of the world of Armageddon.
That's right, Zeckthar. We will discuss the planet's origins, the first war against Angron, the following two against orcs, and what takes place on it since the fall of Cadia.
That's right, Yuksen. And why don't we start with the origins of the planet? Because if I recall right, its original name wasn't Armageddon at all, but Ulanor.
That's right, Zeckthar. Originally, Armageddon was known as Ulanor Prime within the Ulanor system. This dates all the way back to the 30th millennium, where it was ruled by Erlak Erg, and the Emperor was having none of that. What took place next was the Emperor's crowning achievement of the Great Crusade. Led by Horus Lupercal, the Emperor crushed the orcs on Ulanor Prime completely, like my brother described in his short box, The Ulanor Crusade. After the victory, the Emperor gave a triumph for Horus and declared him War Master, after which he peaced out. And as many of us know, that's the pinnacle to the Great Crusade and the prologue to the Horus Heresy. During those bloody years of civil war, Ulanor was all but forgotten, until the War of the Beast as an attack planet in the Sol system.
Yeah, yes, indeed. A Vox that we actually discussed in length, titled The War of the Beast, Part 1 and 2.
So you mean Voxes, plural.
Yes.
Indeed.
English,
But-
it's a hard language to master, especially when you only have tentacles in front of your face. No, carry on, sir.
But after the War of the Beast, the Adeptus Mechanicus were supposed to destroy Ulanor, but being the tech-obsessed individuals that they are, they decided to transport it using Orky green technology to a new location instead, giving them the chance to strip it of all Xenos tech. The Mechanicus proceeded to strip the planet bare and then left it open for later Imperial colonization to further hide their subterfuge. Centuries later, Ulanor was unwittingly colonized by humanity and given a new name, a name that would find its own place in history before long: Armageddon. Now, brother, before we get to the wars on Armageddon, I have to express the massive stones the Mechanicum had in doing this.
Okay.
Especially when prior to this, they had already, went past pushing the envelope, let's put it that way, because they, the rest of the Imperium anyways, knew about Ulanor. The Mechanicus had decided to do their own experimentation on the Orc teleporty tech.
Right. Okay. So if I recall right, hang on a second. Now teleporting, that's how they got the orc moon that just randomly dropped into Terra space, right?
Right, and how
Sure.
orcs were able to just suddenly pop up on the moon itself in vast numbers.
Right. And the guy who was trying to look that up, what was his name? Crap. Shoot. Van Auken? I think his name was Van Auken. Maybe? I'm very sure it's Van Auken.
Well,
he wasn't the fabricator general, but he was a pretty high up Mechanicus monkey money.
yeah.
That was
Well,
working on
one of the first people that was nobly involved was a tech priest by the name of Eldon Urquidex. Who actually had knowledge of the beast's true origins and actually massacred investigative team of the Cis Officio Assassinorum. So, yeah, that did not help their case at all, I think.
The whole thing was kind of interesting, just simply on the concept that it wasn't even like the whole Mechanicus was working on this. This was just a faction of it. I mean, this wasn't, if I recall right, this wasn't even signed off by the fabricator general. This was just this dude working on it.
Yeah, but
and he got it to work, if I recall right.
I
mean, he didn't he transport like a planet from one side of Mars to the other, so they kind of got it to work.
It's more of the fact that
They were trying to be sneaky about it.
Yeah, and the fact that they were holding information from, the Imperium, which kind of needed the information to begin with.
Yeah, it was kind of a time of war. It's like, dude, you need well, at least, okay, maybe not tell everybody.
But
I
at
mean, don't
least
throw it in the
we know
newspaper.
where they came from.
But you should at least tell the guy that's in charge, which, if I recall right, was Corland at the time, right?
Yes, Lord Commander Corland.
So he needs to at least be one of the guys, anyways, that's on the up and up. You don't need to tell everybody, but the people in charge of your military during a war really could benefit from this. That's all.
And the fact that it happened, though, while the Fabricator General wasn't on Mars to begin with. So, in my opinion, the fact that he wasn't there to begin with, it was more of a, we'll do this behind even the Fabricator General's back.
This is Black Ops.
It's kind of what I'm
even
seeing.
More Black Ops. Dig down to who are we even working for again? Doesn't matter. We have our orders. Black Ops.
Yeah. And so...
this is where they kind of figured out, anyways, where all the orcs were coming from, right?
Yeah.
Which, if I recall right, that takes place like in a lull and the first War of the Beast. So we're not even in the Second War yet. Second War, if I recall right, Corland wasn't even in the Second War. I think he was dead.
No. He died when...
Well, the first beast was killed by Vulcan.
Yeah,
in that giant explosion.
Was there for that. He died, I believe.
Right.
During that
event. The second one, anyways, was championed by his bro in the Imperial Fists, and I can't remember his name. Thane, yeah. Who took along a bunch of Sisters of Silence, and that. But we're not talking about the War of the Beast. We did that once already. But the fact, anyways, that they actually, which, by the way, what you were just talking about, kind of proved that the Imperium really had a problem with them using orc technology, especially warp technology, anyways, to transfer things from point A to point B. And then they still did it anyways with Ulanor without telling anybody. How did the Imperium ever actually figure it out?
Not as far as
it was too late.
At least not to this point.
Well,
they may sometime in the future, but not at this point.
Not at this point. So
because they did rename it Armageddon because nobody knew.
By the way, that is a terrible name to rename a planet. You could have named it anything. Let's name it Armageddon. What does that mean? The destruction of worlds.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a good name for a planet, Chief. But so it kind of makes sense, anyways, for instance, we'll talk about this in a second, anyways. But the Second and Third War, it makes sense why the orcs kind of keep coming back to this one planet. Which does beg the question, though, is that maybe the Mechanicus never figured it out, but maybe there is something that is literally calling them back to this planet, which could be kind of interesting.
One of the things that's funny is how orcs, generally, when they start invading a planet, they're just like, this planet's green. It's like, well, in this case, yeah, the planet has been green for quite a while.
It's been green like twice, 3 times. Yeah, this is like the 4th. But no, it does kind of beg the question. I mean, okay, so here's my question to you anyways. What do you think keeps bringing the orcs back to this particular planet?
Well, one of the things it has, though, more recently is the fact that there's a lot of fighting. I mean, everybody's putting their resources into this, so it's like, oh, goody, more fighting to do. We don't even have to really go anywhere.
Yeah, but at the same time, anyways, I mean, like, for instance, Cadia, which, by the way, kind of brings up an interesting question. Why didn't any orcs show up on Cadia? I mean, that was like the grand poobah of all like monstrous warfare. Why didn't they show up? That sounds like something, anyways, that an orc caught wind of. They'd be like, yeah, let's do it. Why didn't they show up on Cadia? More Kruppen. But what brings them to this particular planet? Yes, I understand there's a lot of fight on this planet, but there's a lot of fight on a lot of other planets. What seems to drive them to this one? And it's not just like it's been apparently something has been calling them to this planet for the last 10,000 years. I don't know what it is. Like I said, maybe there's like a shrine of an old one there or something. I don't know. which
Yeah.
feeds into their quark senses. I really don't know. But there is something that seems to be bringing them back continually over and over and over again throughout the last 12,000 years. I mean, it took them a while to find it after the Mechanicus teleported it somewhere else, but
Yeah.
still, they eventually did find it. They're like, what? Green, you know?
Well, that was because of somehow Gazgul got, his story plot's weird, and we'll get to it later. Let's just
Why
move
do you
on
think,
to.
anyways, they're coming to this planet? You never did answer me.
I'm not sure.
Oh,
I don't
so
have a specific idea.
give me a thought.
It's not like the crown of whatever
Glory.
that became a beacon for both the Tyranids and the Orcs.
But something, you will agree with me on this at least anyway. Something is calling them towards Armageddon, right? It's too much of a coincidence that they just keep randomly popping back up on this planet over and over and over and over and over again.
I'm not sure about that. It's only been
12,000 years.
3 times, I think. They were already there one time, and then they were wiped out. Then the Beast, and then the Second War of Armageddon.
And then the Third War of Armageddon.
Well, but it's the same guy who's decided to come back and get vengeance.
He came back. Something's calling him there.
Because he wanted to take it back, because he failed the first time.
Okay, so think about it anyways. We got the 30th millennium anyways. The Emperor takes it over, right?
Right.
So then there's this huge gap of time anyways until the War of the Beast, which takes place, I believe, in actually it's not that huge. It's 32nd or 33rd millennium. Yeah, 32nd. So that's 2,000 years. So which, by the way, the reason why they're not there kind of makes sense at first when you stop and think about it, because you had the Great Crusade taking place during that time. They literally pushed everybody out. And then the Horus Heresy took place. And then that kind of ruined everything. And then all of a sudden, no one was paying attention to good old Ulanor. And the Orcs came back.
And they turned
it. You had the War of the Beast Part 1 and Part 2 anyways. And then after that, the Mechanicus teleported it out to someplace else. So it took a while for the Orcs to figure out where they were, where it was. Then they show up again anyways in the Second War of Armageddon. And then the same guy who ran it comes back in the third. We're talking about like 5 or 6 different events anyways where they just keep coming back. So like I said, I don't think anyways that you have a succinct answer. I don't either. I'm just saying anyways, what is your hypothesis on why they keep coming back?
So the only thing that I can think of right off bat that might possibly make sense is if there is a significant reason for Gork and Mork to want it.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. So like an aspect anyways that for some reason Gork and Mork like this planet.
Yeah.
It's greener than the rest of them. Something along those lines. Okay. Yeah. I'm thinking a little outside the box, but yeah, okay, I can see it. Anyways, moving on with the history of the world of Armageddon. Most of you know about the wars against the Orcs on Armageddon, which we actually just in length were kind of talking about. And with what Yuksen just chronicles, it kind of makes sense because it, originally was Ulanor. But did you all know the first war of Armageddon was actually against Angron and the Horses of Khorne?
Well, I did.
I know you did, Yuksen, but you're a chronicler. I was trying to build some curiosity with those listening.
Oh, sorry. My bad.
Okay, yes. Well, moving on. The first war was fought in 444.M41, and it is the least well-known of the 3 wars. It represented the culmination of years of preparation by the former Primarch and Demon Prince, Angron, the favored champion of Khorne, to unify his world eaters after the Battle of Skalthrax had led the 12th Legion to break up into scattered warbands. You see, Angron sought to recreate a coherent force of Chaos Space Marines, capable of invading deep into the Imperium once more, just as they had done during the Horus Heresy. In the end, it was Angron's own foolish belief in his victory before completing a total conquest of the world that led to the failure of the campaign and his banishment to the warp for 100 Terran years. The First War of Armageddon represents a textbook example of how the forces of chaos can slowly infiltrate an imperial population to eventually bring about a full-scale invasion from the warp. The war also unleashed an internecine conflict in 444 to 445 M41 between the Inquisition and the Space Wolves chapter of the Space Marines, which took issue with the Inquisition's decision to quarantine and sterilize the entire surviving population of Armageddon to maintain the imperial policy of secrecy concerning the existence of chaos and its demonic minions. It was actually a little bit more than that, but we'll get into that anyways in the next couple of weeks. The Space Wolves chapter master, the Great Wolf, Logan Grimnar, saw this action as an outright betrayal of the Imperium's highest ideals, and the Space Wolves initiated a violent campaign against all Inquisition efforts to cleanse the population of Armageddon. The conflict eventually resulted in an orbit battle over the Space Wolves' homeworld of Fenris between the Space Wolves chapter fleet and an Inquisition fleet under the command of Inquisitor Lord Kesme Kesnaros. Now, we will be covering all of this in a future Vox. Actually, I believe we will be covering that next week. But what are you excited to talk about in this first war, Yuksen?
Well, first off, we already kind of talked about the whole chase and run thing when it came to the Space Wolves and the Inquisition, right?
That was a long time ago, but it'll be kind of, personally anyways, I think it'll be kind of nice anyways to kind of refresh it. I kind of miss talking about the Space Wolves, personally, Yuksen. They're one of my favorite chapters. And Logan Grimnar is one of my favorite guys. So it'll be kind of nice anyways to talk about him again. But what are you looking forward to?
When it comes to the first, in comparison to the other ones, it was only one Space Marine chapter. It's kind of interesting.
Yes. It depends on what you call the...
You also have the Grey Knights.
But Grey Knights were there too. But
yeah.
So it kind of depends on if you call them Space Marines. I think most people do, but they're kind of Space Marines. It's one of the best way to describe them. As opposed to Custodes who aren't Space Marines at all, but people still consider them like souped up Space Marines. Like, no, they're not. At least Grey Knights are kind of Space Marines.
So, yeah, the fact that it was only those two forces instead of later, how there's so many different groups that I find they'll be much harder to focus on one of them. So I do like the fact that this will be able to be more focused on the actual people. Plus the fact that it's not as detailed allows us to be able to focus on the majority of it instead of having to try to pick and choose.
Right. Like I said before, anyways, and kind of what you were mentioning, anyways. I mean, we're really going to be focusing a lot on Space Wolves. And we haven't talked about them in about, 2 years?
Something like that.
They were, I think, the second group of people we talked about. So it'll be nice, anyways, to visit, kind of old friends and and kind of discuss, anyways, how that all kind of went down. And I think, anyways, it really kind of one of the people we actually did talk about, Logan Grimnar, who's very important in this. I think this kind of shows a lot of his character too.
Right.
This war.
It also shows what's his name? Ulrich.
The old wolf.
The
only guy, if I recall right, that can call Grimnar young pup.
Yeah. Well, I think Bjorn could too, but
he does.
Everybody's the young pup to him. So.
Yeah. Good point. Well, anyways, tell us, anyways, give us a brief recap, anyways, of what happens with the second war for Armageddon.
Well, the second war took place between 941.M41 through 943.M41. It started when Gazgul Thraka launched an orc war consisting of 5 separate orc tribes in an attempt to seize the planet for themselves. Elements of 3 Space Marine chapters were involved in the defense of Armageddon, including the Blood Angels, Salamanders, and the Ultramarines, along with dozens of regiments of the Astra Militarum, particularly, of course, the Armageddon Steel Legion. as well as a large contingent of Inquisition forces from the Ordo Xenos, composed of squat mercenaries.
What?
A notable,
The squats?
yeah,
Really? Huh.
yeah.
I don't remember the squats being this far forward into the history of Warhammer 40K, but cool. All right. We can talk a little bit of squats. Awesome. Sorry. Go ahead.
My favorite short people. A notable effect of this invasion resulted in Gazgul earning the wrath of Commissar Sebastian Yerrick, who dedicated his efforts after the Second War to hunting down Gazgul, with little success. The main conflict lasted for only 2 standard years, but continuous combat took place between the Imperial forces and the orcs remaining on the world for another 20 Terran years until 961.M41. This war represented a colossal effort between both species for the control of a single, highly strategic planet. Now, as you know, brother, we will be spending a lot of time in the upcoming weeks discussing the players of this war, as well as significant battles and its importance to the Imperium. But what are you most looking forward to discussing with this war?
Ironically, it's the 2 people, anyways, that are going to circumnavigate not only this war, but going into the 3rd, which would be probably Commissar Yark and Gazgul Ul Threka. Now, we have, for a long time, anyways, we've talked about, like, for instance, the Austromilitarum. We talked about the Commissars. We talked about the orcs and famous notable orcs. And every time, anyways, we kind of got comments, anyways, about, like, well, wait a minute, what about Yark? Or what about Gazgul? Well, the reason why we've kind of kept those, haven't talked about them, is because we're going to talk about them in these upcoming months.
And that's what we kept saying over and over again during our voxes.
Because
like, no, we're not talking about them because
exactly. We didn't forget us.
We'll be talking about them.
We just want them in the grand picture of what we're doing here, anyways, with Armageddon. And I mean, just the way, anyways, that their stories intertwine to me, anyways, is entertaining. I mean, the concept that Gazgul lets Yark go because he likes fighting him. I mean, it's so orky. Yeah. It just sounds so orky. It wouldn't make sense for anybody else other than an orc. Yeah. I mean, you know how, last Saturday, anyways, when we were talking about the Terran Crusade and Karos Fate Weaver and his like weird, intricate plans that he has, and you're like, that doesn't make sense to anybody. You know, and I kind of had some problems with that. It's like with the orc, though, letting this guy go so that he can build another army and come fight him because he likes fighting him. Oh, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
because he's an orc. But I mean, just the conversations, anyways, about those 2. Now, mind you, anyways, we're going to also cover the Second War of Armageddon, and you notice, anyways, we went from 2 Space Marine chapters to 3 at this point.
Yeah. So one of the things I also want to mention that I find interesting now I think about it is how much of a headache do you think the orcs are to pretty much the Chaos Gods, for that matter? I mean, it
depends on which one you're talking about. I think, anyways, it's frustrating for Khorne, but I think he finds slight amusement in them. I mean, they are doing pretty much what he does, but he doesn't get any benefits out of it. I think that's what frustrates him, but at the same time, he's just like, yes, war, blood, chaos, honor, blah.
Yeah, which is why the demon hunter is constantly being resurrected.
Yeah. I think Tzeentch, quite frankly, anyways, Tzeentch actually might be the person that has the least problem with orcs. Just on the concept that, I mean, when we talked about Tzeentch, he is probably the closest thing you can think of, anyways, to, like, literally, he is chaos.
Yeah.
The other Chaos Gods kind of follow their own regiments of rules of what they're talking about. Tzeentch is literally chaos.
Yeah, because he gets his power from change.
Right.
And what more can cause change than chaos?
Than chaos and anarchy. Which, by the way, like I said, anyways, is probably why he has the least problem with the orcs, because they are in on themselves chaos incarnate. Who knows what an orc will do? The only thing we can think of, anyways, is that they will find something to crump. That's about it. How they go about doing that, who knows? I mean, Nurgle probably doesn't think much of them, and Slaanesh probably detests them.
Yeah.
But I mean, if we want to kind of break it down, anyways, that way. So I think, anyways, the two larger of the Chaos Gods, if anything, don't have a problem with them. At the most, they're kind of amused by them. At the least, they kind of see them as a nuisance. And then the two smaller gods, it's just kind of, they don't really like them. But at the same time,
it would piss off Karos having to try to do anything with them.
Oh, Karos,
Karos Fate Weaver. Imagine him having to deal with them.
I just want, anyways,
that would be torture.
I want to see an orc that goes into Zinch's hall, anyways, and Karos is there, and he presents this orc in front of Karos and says, "Okay, tell me his future," and just watch his heads explode.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't know. Either that, or he finally figures it out, and then the orc like stabs him.
Yeah,
didn't see that coming, you know.
Yeah,
but yeah. So I mean, that's, to me, anyways, Yark and Gazgul. That's what I'm really looking excited, anyways, about the second war. What are you looking forward to, anyways, in the second war?
Well,
other than the squat mercenaries.
Yeah.
We'll probably have to talk about them.
We'll have to talk about that. I mean, seriously. My favorite short race, the squats.
Oh, and is this the one, anyways, that has Socrates?
Who?
The guy who made the submarines, the orc.
No, because the submarines were made during the Third War.
Third War, okay. Yeah.
And it's my theory that he's also the person who was taken by Gazgul to create the teleported devices.
Right. Well, okay. Well, we'll get to that here in a minute. But what are you looking forward to, anyways, in the second war? Orchimedes. My bad. Yeah, Orchimedes. So, what are you looking forward to in the second war?
Part of it is definitely the interactions between Yurik and Gazgul.
Mm-hmm.
It also shows more of an aspect. I believe it's also the one that Dante's involved in.
I don't remember it, quite frankly. I know the Blood Angels are part of it, but he might be involved with actually both of them.
Yeah.
But anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
Which will be interesting because we haven't really covered
Blood Angels yet.
The Blood Angels yet. And we've touched on the Salamanders. I mean, we did do one on the Salamanders, but I think this is before we mainly focused when they were interacting on Armageddon.
Yeah, I think the guy that we talked about, anyways, in Armageddon is actually in the Third War, and I want to say that's Tushan.
Yeah,
and he's like the chapter master who has a problem with the Marines Malevolent. So
yeah, that's the reason why we brought him up, was because he has the same sort of feeling that most people have towards the Marines Malevolent, which is you're a-holes.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the Third War of Armageddon, it began in 998.M41. And much like the Second War, was a massive conflict between humanity and the largest orc Woog ever assembled, led by yours truly, Warlord Gazgul Mag Uruk Thraka. The war was fought after Thraka launched his first attempt to seize the planet exactly, which is interesting, 57 standard years before. The conflict eventually drew in portions of over 25 Space Marine chapters, dozens of Astra Militarum regiments, several Titan legions, and caused immense destruction to Armageddon before essentially kind of ending an extremely narrow Imperial victory. Though neither the Imperial nor Orc forces were able to secure complete control over the contested world, and fighting is still ongoing across the planet, which Yuksen will talk about here in a second. But, I mean, technically, like I was just saying anyways, the Third War is not over. And, again, what are you excited to talk about in the coming weeks about the Third War of Armageddon, Yuksen?
Well, first off, to say that the Imperium would, let's face it, pretty much any world that's been partially invaded by orcs, it's been nigh impossible to remove them from the planet.
As far as I know, the only way to get rid of orcs is pretty much fire.
Yeah,
there's only been everything.
One planet they can think of right offhand that had actually completely eliminated them off their planet, and that was Valhalla.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that would make
I
sense.
think all the other ones still have like every 10, 20 years, all of a sudden they'll pop up as like, no, why? Uh,
Well, okay, I would say, anyways, any planet that they landed on that was a home planet to a Space Marine chapter, probably they don't live there either.
if it was
Well,
the
okay.
home
Well, I
planet,
guess here's a question.
maybe.
Anyways, the Crimson Fist, what Rim's World, right?
Yeah,
Are they still on Rim's World, or do they get rid of them?
there are probably some still in Rin's world.
I I think anyway, Space Marines are smart enough. I mean, the only thing, like I said, the only thing I know, anyways, that can kill orcs, like completely eradicate them from someplace, is fire.
And that's
Because
because it burns the spores that actually
exactly
come off.
right,
Which, unfortunately, if you don't have
a bunch of flamethrowers, you're in quite the pickle.
and let's face it, how many Crimson Fists do you think had a flamer at the time?
Uh, I just got this mental image, anyways, of a of an Astartes with a fly swatter going through all these spores. Die! You know, swinging back and forth. Yeah.
Dang it, I missed 50 of them.
It's like, well, the good news is that you killed about 12,000 of them. The bad news is there are about 12 million of them left. It's
Yeah.
like, no! But yeah, so what are you looking forward to in the third war?
The third war, well, one of the things I'm looking forward to is Orchimedes.
Orchimedes will be fun to talk about, yes.
Yeah. What little we know about him. But we know about his inventions. We know next to nothing about him.
Grimaldus is in this one, right? The chaplain from the Black Templars. I think that's his name. He's so we've mentioned a few times before. Anyways, there is a YouTube video that I think it's called Grimaldus or something along those lines. It's a very good video, and it chronicles a book, anyways, of his whole character and what happened to him, anyways, in the Third War of Armageddon. It's very good. I would recommend listening to it. But this one seems to have a whole lot more characters to it, the Third War. Well, I mean, we went from 3 Space Marine chapters to 25. So.
And not a few, but dozens of extra military regiments. Oh, and this time, Titans.
But sad day, the squats didn't make it back.
The squats is like, well, they decided not to pay us this time.
I don't know. So you're looking forward to sorry, got to think about Grimaldus. You're looking forward to what?
I'm looking forward to, well, one thing I'm looking forward to is the interaction of the Black Templar and the Salamanders, because that is an interesting interaction.
Interesting, yes, I agree with you. Oh, Orchimedes.
I'm also looking forward to the mechanizations and Orchimedes himself.
Right, being a brilliant orc.
Yeah. Brilliant at mass destruction.
How do we describe brilliant here? Yeah, I think, anyways, quite frankly, I always get the the second and the third War of Armageddon. I get that a lot of times, anyways, very blended. When I think about it, it'll be interesting. Anyways,
the two main characters are exactly the same.
Yeah. There are some things, though, anyways, I know a little bit more, I guess, about the third War of Armageddon, because we kind of discussed it more when we talked about, like, for instance, the Salamanders. It seemed to be a significantly larger conflict, too, than the second war. So, and I believe, anyways, the third war is the one with Snickrod in it, right?
I'm not sure about that one.
He's either in this. It's either he's in the second and third one, or he's in the third one.
I think Zagstruck is in one of them too. I want to say the third one. He's the guy who got the augmentics for his feet so he could really squish people on the way down. Flyboy.
That sounds like an orc thing to do. But that's the other thing too that I'm kind of looking forward to. Both of these is the fact that, anyways, we're back to talking about orcs and the ridiculousness of what orcs are. I mean, remember, anyways, orcs are the ones, anyways, that built in Warhammer Fantasy. They they built the Doom Diver. You remember the Doom Diver? It was a catapult that launched a goblin with wings, and they put a giant spike on his head because the goblin couldn't figure out how to land. So his object was to actually like spear somebody as he was going down.
Well, I believe originally it was made so that they could spy and write stuff down, but generally what happened was was what was written on it.
Every time they found the corpse of this goblin, they'd find, the little chalkboard, and all it said was, whee, across the side of it. So, yes, same people, different universe.
Instead, it's rockets.
Yeah. But what is the last thing that we are going to be covering when it comes to Armageddon there, Yuksen?
Okay, so the last part we're going to be covering is, obviously, it's already been much of a battleground. Pretty much the majority of the end of the 41st millennium, as we know.
Yeah.
And it kind of was starting to die down a bit, as you said, but then we had the wonderful event of the Great Rift.
In everybody's favorite year, 999.M41. That's when everything happens, Yuksen.
Yeah. So during the period of the Noctis Aeterna, reinforcements were cut off for both sides, and those en route to the system were swept into oblivion. Those combatants who remained on Armageddon were forced to face not just each other, but oncoming waves of demons. At times, so desperate were the defenders that orc and humans fought alongside each other against the greater threat. Such temporary ceasefires never lasted long. By the time the beacon of the Astronomicon burned bright once more and easy travel through the Immaterium was possible, an Imperial relief force arrived to find the landscape of Armageddon greatly changed. At the height of the warp storms, the demonic forces of Tzeentch and Khorne had battled each other as part of their eternal competition in the Great Game. The orcs and Imperial defenders sought cover as titanic crater demons dueled for supremacy. Fully half the planet was reshaped into a hellish landscape, reminiscent of many demon worlds. A nightmare born of the warp merged with the ruins of a war-torn hive world. The Imperial reinforcements, led by elements of 9 Space Marine chapters, with the Salamanders in overall command, succeeded in halting a demonic ritual that would have brought Angron, the Primarch of the World Eaters, back to the world that had defied him during the First War of Armageddon. So, what are your thoughts on the endless war on this planet?
You know how we were talking about how it seems to be an attractor to orcs? We're kind of wondering anyways why that was. Maybe it's just not just orcs. I mean, it seems like, like Khorne and Tzeentch are fighting over this planet too, which is kind of sticking in my craw a little bit. Why?
Part of the Great Game, which I don't think we've ever discussed.
Oh, we've dabbled in it a wee bit. I mean, the Great Game is just, the Chaos Gods trying to figure out or trying to get one up on each other. Eventually, one will rule. That's the thought process. But
at one point, it was said that Tzeentch was actually more powerful than all of them, and then they all ganged up on him and then shattered him, and that's where
he shattered into 1,000 pieces.
Yeah,
right.
And just hope that none of them all find each other. That would be scary, actually.
Well, I don't even know if they can at this point, because who knows if they're all still around.
Yeah.
To me, anyways, it's just kind of interesting because just from the stuff that I've read about Armageddon, yes, it's a Forge world. It's a Hive Forge world. Where, they build all sorts of different stuff. But other than that, I don't see anything that really has a huge relevance. It's not like Hadia.
Well,
Hadia made sense. It had those pylons on it, and it kind of kept the warp at bay. That made sense. But Armageddon?
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
One of the things, I could see in Tzeentch's case, with his sort of humor, it'd go, well, where else should we fight? But the planet that's called Armageddon. Seriously.
True, they kind of named it. But
with a name like that, where else should we fight?
But other than that, really thin logic there. It does, from what I've seen on the maps, it doesn't seem like it holds any like strategic value, anyways, where it is in the universe. It doesn't.
Though
Yes,
it
there's
is a planet.
billions of people on it, but it doesn't seem like it's super important.
It is a planet that Korn, by extension from Angron, failed to conquer.
So you thinking that just kind of sticks in his craw? He's like, I gotta take it.
That it may be a aspect of it, possibly.
Hence why Zinch doesn't want him to take it, because those two are kind of the biggest rivals.
Yeah, they are kind of the biggest rivals from each other, aren't they?
Yeah, Zinch does not like Korn, and Korn does not like Zinch. And then there's also another god that they don't each like, and Korn, I think it's Slanesh, and Korn it's Slanesh, and Zinch it's Nurgle.
Yeah.
Mainly because, ironically, out of all four of the gods, Nurgle is probably the most orderly.
Yeah. Because he believes in the cycle of life.
Right.
Which is actually a cycle instead of...
Now, mind you, he might push that cycle anyways along, but...
Yeah.
Well, folks,
we already know he has a very twisted mind.
They all do.
Yeah.
I don't think he's one of them anyways that you can look at and go, well, they're completely sane. You know? Well, on that note, we are out of time for today. Now, I know this one went a little bit short, but it was kind of an overview of what we're going to be talking about for the next few weeks. And I hope you liked this overview. So much so that you join us next week when we really dig into the first war against Angron.
Fantastic! But if you enjoyed our little show, could you please be so kind as to push that subscribe, like, or follow button? And if you wish to help us expand our work on 40k lore, by all means, support us by joining our membership program on our YouTube channel, Tales of Asharaka.
Yes, indeed. And most importantly, have a great day. And until next time, this is Zeckthar
and Yuksen,
signing off.